Nathan Mercer was 43 years old when he discovered that the woman he had loved for 15 years had never been faithful for any of them. For 15 years, he believed he had built a solid marriage. Not perfect, not glamorous, but real. He worked. He provided. He showed up every day. And while he was doing that, his wife, Lauren, was living an entirely different life. The discovery didn't happen because she confessed. It didn't happen because someone exposed her. It happened because a storage unit bill arrived at his office by mistake. Bill for a unit he had never rented. A unit his wife had been paying for every month for nearly 13 years. What Nathan found inside that storage unit would unravel everything he thought he knew about his marriage. Photographs, letters, receipts, gifts, evidence of multiple relationships, stretching back longer than he could comprehend. But the most shocking discovery wasn't that Lauren had been cheating. It was that she had been planning for the end of their marriage almost from the beginning, and she believed Nathan would never figure it out. She had no idea that the quiet man she underestimated had already started preparing his response. And what happened next would cost her everything she thought she was protecting. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Nathan Mercer woke up every morning at 5:18, not because he needed to, because routine had become part of who he was. The alarm sat on the nightstand. Most mornings it never got the chance to ring. He would wake first, turn it off, slide out of bed, then start the day. The kitchen came alive the same way it always did. Coffee, emails, calendar review, construction schedules, vendor reports. Nathan owned a commercial renovation company outside Columbus. Nothing flashy, nothing that made headlines. But after 20 years of work, it had become successful, profitable, stable, reliable, a lot like him. Lauren often joked that Nathan could survive any crisis because he approached life the same way he approached construction projects. Slowly, methodically, without panic. Nathan always laughed when she said it. What he didn't know was that those same traits would eventually become the reason she lost everything. That Tuesday started like every other Tuesday. Lauren came downstairs around 7. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smile. She kissed his cheek, asked about his schedule, told him she had lunch with a client, then disappeared out the front door. Nathan watched her leave, completely unaware that she had just told him the first lie of the day. The envelope arrived Thursday afternoon. Nothing about it stood out. White envelope, corporate logo, monthly invoice. Nathan almost threw it away, and he noticed the name. Lauren Mercer, Storage Unit 814, monthly payment due. Nathan frowned. Storage unit? They didn't have a storage unit. At least he didn't think they did. He opened the envelope. The payment history went back 12 years. 12. His eyes stayed fixed on the page. Every month, without interruption. Thousands of dollars over time. For a facility 30 minutes from their home. Nathan read the address twice, then 3 times. Something felt wrong. Not alarming. Not yet. Just wrong. And Nathan had learned long ago to pay attention when something felt wrong. That evening, he asked Lauren a simple question. "Do we have a storage unit?" She answered instantly. No. The speed of the answer bothered him more than the answer itself. Most people think before they answer. Lauren didn't. She reacted. And that reaction stayed with him long after she fell asleep. Saturday morning, Nathan drove to the facility. He didn't tell anyone. He simply showed up. The manager checked identification, verified the billing information, then handed him temporary access. The lock clicked open. Nathan pulled the door upward, and everything changed. Boxes, dozens of them, neatly organized, carefully labeled. Years of hidden history. Nathan opened the first one. Photographs. Lauren. Different men. Different cities. Different years. His stomach tightened. Second box. Letters. Handwritten. Intimate. Personal. Dated throughout their marriage. Third box. Hotel receipts. Vacation records. Jewelry appraisals. Old phones. Burner devices. Entire relationships archived like museum exhibits. Nathan sat down on a folding chair inside the unit. The silence around him felt enormous. 15 years. Not one affair. Not two. An entire parallel life. And somehow she had preserved every piece of it, as if she always knew she would want to remember. Or prove something. Nathan spent 4 hours documenting everything. He photographed every box, every document, every receipt. He left nothing disturbed. When he finally drove home, Lauren greeted him with a smile and asked how his morning had been. Nathan smiled back. Fine. Just running errands. It was the first lie he had ever told his wife. It would not be the last. Nathan now knew his wife had spent 15 years building a secret life. What he didn't know yet was why she had kept evidence of everything. The answer would come 3 weeks later, inside a black file folder hidden beneath the final box in Unit 814. And what that folder contained had nothing to do with love. It had everything to do with money. At the very bottom of the storage unit sat a black portfolio case, locked, heavy, different from everything else. Nathan opened it using a small key taped beneath the lid. Inside were financial records, trust documents, property transfers, investment accounts, life insurance policies, spreadsheets, detailed spreadsheets. His name appeared everywhere. So did his assets. So did projected values. Lauren wasn't simply documenting affairs. She had been tracking his financial growth for over a decade, projecting future wealth, estimating business value, calculating retirement accounts. Nathan stared at page after page. This wasn't emotional betrayal. This was strategic. And suddenly, 15 years began making a different kind of sense. Lauren had never been planning a marriage. She had been planning an exit, one she believed would eventually make her rich. She just didn't know Nathan was already building one of his own. Nathan called exactly one person. Victor Hayes. They had known each other for 19 years. Victor was a forensic accountant, the kind of accountant companies hired when they suspected something was wrong but couldn't prove it. Nathan trusted him, not because Victor was brilliant, though he was, because Victor cared about facts more than conclusions. 3 days later, they sat in Victor's office. The storage unit evidence spread across a conference table. Victor moved through the records slowly, methodically, the way Nathan had. Neither man rushed. By noon, Victor leaned back in his chair, then removed his glasses. That's not good. Nathan already knew it wasn't good. Still, hearing someone else say it mattered. How bad? Victor folded his hands. Worse than you think. He slid several pages forward. Lauren wasn't only tracking your assets. She's moving money. Nathan felt something tighten in his chest. How much? Victor pointed at a spreadsheet. Over 11 years? Approximately $470,000. Nathan didn't speak. The number settled between them. Almost $500,000. Moved slowly, carefully. Always below reporting thresholds. Always small enough to avoid attention. Monthly withdrawals. Quarterly transfers. Investment diversions. The pattern was brilliant, because no single transaction looked suspicious. But together, it formed a map. A roadmap leading directly away from the marriage. Victor opened another file. Then things got worse. Nathan looked up. Victor slid over account records. The destination accounts weren't solely Lauren's. They belonged to multiple individuals. Different names, different cities, different years. The same names appearing beside letters and photographs from Unit 814. The affairs. Nathan finally understood. Lauren wasn't preserving relationships. She was funding them. Some lasted months. Some lasted years. One had apparently lasted nearly 6. Nathan stared at the documents. 15 years. And she had never stopped. Not once. Victor watched him carefully. You okay? Nathan nodded. Yeah. The answer surprised even him, because he was okay. Not happy. Not unhurt. But okay. The grief had already started transforming into something else. Clarity. And clarity could be useful. Victor closed the folder. What do you want to do? Nathan looked at the stack of evidence. Everything. I want the complete picture. $470,000. Multiple affairs. Secret accounts. Most people would have confronted their spouse immediately. Nathan didn't, because Victor discovered something even more important. A scheduled transfer. One that hadn't happened yet. And if Nathan moved too early, he would never see where it was going. The transfer was scheduled for 30 days later. $280,000. Victor discovered it buried inside account authorizations. The money wasn't coming from Lauren. It was coming from a jointly owned investment account. Their investment account. Nathan sat quietly as Victor explained. She believes you'll never notice. Victor tapped the paperwork. She's preparing for something. Nathan already knew what. The storage unit had told him. The spreadsheets had told him. The affairs had told him. Lauren was preparing to leave. What she didn't know was that her timeline had become his advantage. For the next month, Nathan did exactly what he'd always done. He went to work. He came home. He ate dinner. He listened. He watched. And for the first time in 15 years, he paid attention. The details were everywhere. Late meetings, weekend conferences, phone calls taken outside, trips that suddenly made more sense. Nathan began building his own timeline. Every excuse, every absence, every inconsistency. No accusations, no arguments, just information. The same way he approached construction problems. First understand the structure, then decide what needs to come down. By the end of the month, he had assembled something remarkable. Not evidence of one affair. Evidence of 8. 8 different men. Across 15 years. Some overlapping. Some consecutive. Everyone documented. Everyone funded. Everyone hidden behind the image of a devoted wife. The transfer date arrived on a Tuesday. Victor called at 8:13 a.m. Nathan answered immediately. It happened. Nathan sat upright. Where'd it go? Victor exhaled. That's the interesting part. The money didn't go to Lauren. It went to a trust. Nathan listened carefully. A trust controlled by one person. Who? Victor looked down at the report. Ethan Cole. Nathan had never heard the name before. But within 48 hours, he would discover exactly who Ethan Cole was, and why Lauren had spent nearly 6 years preparing him for a future she assumed Nathan would finance. Ethan Cole was 41, divorced, financially unstable, 3 failed businesses, multiple lawsuits, substantial debt. And according to the evidence Victor uncovered, Lauren's longest relationship, nearly 6 years. Nathan sat in silence while reading the report. 6 years, not 6 months, not one mistake. 6 years, long enough to build another life, long enough to leave, long enough to believe she eventually would. Victor continued, There's more. Of course there was. There always was. The trust documentation included beneficiary designations. Lauren, Ethan. Future dependents. Nathan felt cold. Future dependents. Children. A future. A life. The life she had apparently planned all along. And according to every financial projection, Nathan found in Unit 814, that future depended almost entirely on his money, his business, his retirement, his investments, his work. Victor slid one final page across the table. Projected divorce settlement. Nathan read it once, then again. Lauren expected to receive nearly $4 million. She had modeled everything: business growth, property appreciation, retirement expansion, projected legal outcomes. She had spent years planning what she'd receive after ending the marriage. What she never considered was one simple problem. Nathan now knew everything. And knowledge changes outcomes, particularly when the wrong person has been underestimated. Nathan closed the folder, then stood. Victor looked up. Where are you going? Nathan smiled. To hire an attorney, because I think my wife is finally about to learn who she's actually married to. Lauren believed she was months away from walking into a carefully planned future. What she didn't know was that Nathan's attorney had already identified the single mistake that could destroy her entire strategy. One document, one signature, one financial move she never should have made. And once the court saw it, everything would change. Sandra Whitaker had spent 23 years dismantling bad divorces. She had seen hidden accounts, secret relationships, forged documents, asset transfers. But after reviewing Nathan's evidence, she spent almost 30 seconds staring at one specific page without speaking. Finally, she looked up. "Your wife got greedy." Nathan sat across from her conference table. How? Sandra tapped a document. Because she stopped preparing for divorce and started preparing for fraud. The distinction mattered. Legally, financially, strategically. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Sandra rotated the document. Lauren had transferred marital assets into a trust controlled by Ethan Cole. Not disclosed. Not authorized. Not reported. And most importantly, not legally protected. Sandra smiled for the first time. This changes everything. For the next 6 weeks, Sandra's team worked quietly. Account records, property records, transfer histories, tax filings, trust documentation, everything. The evidence pile grew larger every day. Victor handled financial tracing. Sandra handled legal strategy. Nathan handled patience, which turned out to be the most important part. Because Lauren still believed she was ahead, she smiled at dinner, talked about future vacations, mentioned retirement ideas, discussed remodeling projects, all while preparing to leave. And every night Nathan listened. Every night she unknowingly gave away more information. Every night the case became stronger. 3 weeks later, Sandra called. "We have her." Nathan knew immediately. "What happened?" Sandra laughed softly. "Ethan filed bankruptcy." Nathan froze. "What?" "Last week. Everything became public. His debt records, his liabilities, his lawsuits. The trust surfaced. The transfers surfaced. The relationship surfaced." Nathan sat back. The room suddenly felt quiet. For years, Lauren had managed everything carefully. One bankruptcy filing had exposed it all. Sandra continued. "She has no idea yet, but she will. Soon." Lauren filed first, exactly as Nathan expected. Monday morning, 8:42 a. Petition for divorce. Irreconcilable differences. Nathan wasn't surprised. Sandra wasn't surprised. Nobody on his team was surprised, because they'd been expecting it for months. Lauren arrived home that evening carrying takeout. Completely unaware, Nathan sat at the dining room table. The divorce papers rested neatly beside him. Lauren stopped walking. For a moment, her face drained of color. Then she recovered. "Nathan, I was going to explain." "No." Nathan's voice remained calm. "You weren't." Silence filled the room. Lauren sat slowly. Nathan watched her, really watched her. Perhaps for the first time. The confidence, the calculation, the assumptions, all visible now. "I know about Ethan." Lauren didn't move. "I know about the trust." Still nothing. I know about the storage unit. That finally broke her composure. The color disappeared entirely. Nathan continued. The affairs, the transfers, the accounts, the projections, the plan, all of it. Lauren stared at him, completely speechless. For 15 years, Nathan had been predictable, reliable, safe. Now she looked at him as if she had never seen him before, because she hadn't. Not really. You went through the unit? Nathan nodded. Every box, every letter, every receipt. Lauren lowered her eyes. The performance began immediately. Tears, regret, explanations, mistakes, confusion. Nathan listened patiently. Then he asked one question. How long? Lauren closed her eyes. A long time. How long? 15 years. The words landed quietly, almost gently. 15 years. Not part of the marriage, the entire marriage. Nathan nodded once, exactly as he'd suspected. Everything after that became easier, because uncertainty disappeared. And certainty has a strange way of making difficult decisions simple. Lauren finally looked up. What happens now? Nathan slid a folder across the table. You find out. Inside the folder were hundreds of pages. Financial records, transfer histories, affair timelines, trust documents. Lauren thought the confrontation was the worst part. It wasn't. The worst part happened 3 weeks later, inside a courtroom, when the judge started reading findings aloud, and Lauren realized her entire plan had become evidence against her. The courtroom was quiet. Sandra sat beside Nathan. Victor occupied the second row. Lauren sat across the room beside attorneys who looked increasingly uncomfortable. The evidence was overwhelming. Not because of one affair. Not because of Ethan. Not because of the trust. Because of the pattern. 15 years. Thousands of transactions. Hundreds of documents. Years of intentional deception. The judge reviewed everything, patiently, methodically. Then came the ruling. The undisclosed transfers. Reversed. The trust. Invalidated. The hidden assets. Recovered. Lauren's claims against Nathan's company. Denied. The financial consequences were devastating. Everything she'd spent years preparing collapsed in a single afternoon. The trust disappeared. The projected settlement vanished. The future she'd built around Ethan dissolved. And Ethan? He disappeared before proceedings even ended. No dramatic goodbye. No loyalty. No sacrifice. Just silence. Exactly the way men like Ethan usually leave. Lauren learned the truth too late. The relationship she protected for 6 years had only survived because it was fantasy. Reality demanded more. And Ethan wasn't interested in reality. 6 months later, Nathan finalized everything. The business remained his. The properties remained his. The retirement accounts remained secure. Most importantly, his peace returned. One evening, Victor joined him on the back patio. The sun was setting. The neighborhood was quiet. For a while, neither spoke. Then Victor asked the question everyone eventually asked. Do you regret knowing? Nathan thought about it. The storage unit, the photographs, the letters, the affairs, the betrayal, 15 years of lies. He looked out across the yard. No, Victor nodded. Because now you know who she was? Nathan smiled slightly. No, because now I know who I am. The answer hung between them. Simple, true, complete. For 15 years, Nathan had measured his worth through loyalty, through sacrifice, through commitment. Lauren had mistaken those qualities for weakness. She believed patience meant passivity. She believed kindness meant ignorance. She believed reliability meant dependency. She was wrong. What she never understood was that the strongest structures aren't the ones that never face pressure. They're the ones that remain standing after it. Nathan had built his life the same way he built everything else. Carefully, deliberately, one piece at a time. And when the truth finally arrived, it didn't destroy him. It revealed him. A year later, Nathan expanded his company into 2 additional states. The business reached its highest revenue in history. He funded scholarships for trade school students, paid off his mother's mortgage, started mentoring young contractors entering the industry. The energy he once spent maintaining a false marriage now flowed into things that actually deserved it. One Saturday morning, he drove past the storage facility. Unit 814 still existed. Same building, same row, same number. Nathan looked at it briefly, then kept driving. He didn't need the evidence anymore. He didn't need the anger anymore. He didn't even need the answers anymore, because the story had already ended. And unlike Lauren, he had built something real. A first call came 8 days after the ruling. Nathan didn't answer. He was reviewing site plans for a medical office renovation outside Dayton when his phone vibrated across the desk. Lauren. He looked at the screen, then returned to the plans. The phone stopped. A minute later it rang again. Lauren. Again he ignored it. By evening she had called 7 times. No voicemail. No message. Just repeated attempts. Nathan already understood why. The court had finished with the legal consequences. Reality was just beginning the personal ones. Because courtrooms settle cases, they don't settle regret. Over the next 3 weeks, the calls continued. Different numbers. Blocked numbers. Occasional texts. Can we talk? Please. I just want closure. Nathan never responded. Not because he hated her. Not because he wanted revenge. Because there was nothing left to discuss. The conversation Lauren wanted should have happened years earlier, back when honesty still had value. Now it was simply too late. One Thursday evening, Victor stopped by the office. They grabbed dinner at a small steakhouse near the interstate. Halfway through the meal, Victor looked up. She contacted me. Nathan paused. Victor nodded. Wanted to know if I'd convince you to meet. Nathan laughed softly. And I told her no. Good answer. Victor took a sip of water. She looks rough. Nathan said nothing. Not because he enjoyed hearing it. Because he didn't. The truth was stranger than that. At some point, the anger had disappeared. Not faded. Disappeared. What remained wasn't forgiveness. It was distance. Lauren had become someone he used to know. And people you used to know don't occupy the same space in your life. The check arrived. The waiter cleared plates. The conversation moved on. Lauren stayed exactly where she belonged. In the past, Nathan thought the story was finished. The divorce was final. The money had been recovered. The future was secure. Then Victor discovered something unexpected. A property, purchased 7 years earlier, hidden through multiple shell entities. And when investigators followed the ownership trail, it led directly back to Lauren. The property sat 2 hours south of Columbus. Small town, quiet road, 3-bedroom farmhouse. Nothing remarkable from the outside. The records surfaced during final asset audits. At first, Victor assumed it was unrelated. Then he noticed a familiar signature. Lauren's, not directly, indirectly, buried beneath layers of paperwork, but unmistakably hers. Nathan reviewed the documents carefully. When did she buy it? 7 years ago. 7. Nathan shook his head. There was almost something impressive about the consistency. Every year of the marriage seemed to contain a new secret. Victor continued. The mortgage was paid off 3 years ago. Nathan looked up. Paid off with what? Victor slid another report across the table. Transfers. The same transfers. The same money stream. The same hidden accounts. Nathan leaned back. 7 years. A house, fully paid. Never mentioned. Never disclosed. Never used. Why? That question lingered for days, until Victor finally answered it. The property wasn't an investment. It was an escape plan. Nathan understood immediately. The farmhouse wasn't about money. It was about certainty. Lauren had built herself a backup life, a place to land if everything else failed. The realization should have shocked him. Instead, it felt inevitable, because by then he understood something fundamental. Lauren never trusted anyone, not fully, not Ethan, not the other men, not even herself. Every secret account, every hidden transfer, every affair, every document, every contingency, they all pointed toward the same thing: fear. She spent 15 years preparing for disasters that never happened, and eventually created one herself. The farmhouse sold 6 months later. The proceeds went exactly where the court ordered. Nathan never visited. He never wanted to. Some structures aren't worth walking through, even when they're legally yours. Ethan resurfaced 18 months later. Nathan learned about it accidentally. A former business associate mentioned seeing him. Different city, different job, different life. Apparently, he'd taken a management position with a logistics company. Nothing glamorous. Nothing close to the future he'd imagined. Victor found the irony amusing. Nathan simply listened. Eventually, Victor asked, "Do you ever think about him?" Nathan considered the question. "Honestly, not really." Victor smiled. "That's probably healthy. Maybe." Nathan looked out the restaurant window, then added quietly, "The thing about Ethan is that he wasn't actually the problem." Victor raised an eyebrow. "No?" Nathan shook his head. If it wasn't Ethan, it would have been someone else. Because Ethan wasn't the cause. He was the symptom. Victor sat back. That's probably the smartest thing you've said all year. Nathan laughed. The truth had taken him a long time to understand. For months after discovering everything, he'd focused on names, faces, affairs, timelines, but eventually the pattern became obvious. The individuals changed. The behavior never did, which meant the real issue had never been another man. The real issue had always been Lauren. And once Nathan understood that, healing became easier, because he stopped competing with ghosts and started moving forward. 2 years after the divorce, Nathan received a letter. No return address, no explanation, just a single handwritten note. The handwriting belonged to Lauren, and what she wrote took less than 15 seconds to read. But it explained more than 15 years of marriage ever had. The envelope arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Nathan almost threw it away. Then he recognized the handwriting. Lauren. He stood in the kitchen for several seconds, looking at it, considering, then opened it. 1 page, 1 paragraph, no greeting, no signature, just words. Nathan, you were the only person who ever actually loved me. And I spent 15 years trying to figure out why that scared me. I'm sorry, that was it. Nothing more. No request. No explanation. No attempt to restart communication. Just an apology. Years late, but genuine. Nathan folded the paper, placed it back inside the envelope, then sat quietly. The rain tapped softly against the windows. He thought about the storage unit, the farmhouse, the affairs, the court hearings, the lies, the damage. And strangely, the apology changed nothing. Not because it wasn't sincere, because healing had already happened. The apology wasn't necessary anymore. Nathan eventually stood, walked to his office, opened a drawer, placed the envelope inside, then closed it. Some things don't need answers. Some things don't need endings. Sometimes they simply stop. And that's enough. 5 years after everything collapsed, Nathan stood inside the headquarters of Mercer Commercial Group. The company occupied 3 floors now, 2 states, more than 80 employees. A business far larger than the one Lauren had once projected in her spreadsheets. The irony wasn't lost on him. The future she'd tried to calculate had exceeded every estimate, just not in the way she expected. Nathan walked through the office, greeting employees, checking projects, reviewing plans. The same man he'd always been, just lighter, more peaceful, more present. At evening he drove home, the sun setting behind the trees, the road familiar, the life familiar. And as he turned into his driveway, Nathan realized something. There had been a time when he believed Lauren was the center of his story. She wasn't. Not really. She was a chapter. A painful one. An important one. But still just a chapter. The story had always been about something else. Integrity. Patience. Self-respect. Quiet strength to keep building when someone else is trying to tear things apart. Nathan parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment, the same way he always did. The house was quiet. The future was open. The past was finished. And for the first time in a very long time, everything was exactly where it belonged. Lauren's deposition began at 9 a.m. She arrived at 8:47. Designer coat. Controlled expression. A folder held tightly against her chest. Nathan saw her through the glass wall of the conference room. For a moment, she looked exactly like the woman he had been married to. Composed, polished, certain. Then Sandra leaned slightly toward him. "Watch her hands." Nathan looked. Lauren's hands were trembling. Not much, just enough. Sandra noticed everything. That was why Nathan had hired her. The court reporter finished setting up. The attorneys took their places. Lauren sat across from Nathan, but she did not look at him. Not once. Sandra began calmly. "Mrs. Mercer, did you rent storage unit 814? Lauren's attorney objected to form. Sandra waited. Lauren swallowed. "Yes. For how long? I don't remember exactly." Sandra opened a document. "Would 12 years and 9 months refresh your memory?" Lauren looked down. "Yes. And during that period, did your husband know the unit existed?" "No." "Why not?" Lauren's attorney shifted. Lauren remained silent. Sandra let the silence work. That was one of her strengths. She never rushed into a space the truth was already filling. Eventually, Lauren answered. "It was private." "Private." Sandra nodded, then turned a page. "Were the photographs private too?" Lauren's face tightened. "Were the letters private?" No answer. "Were the hotel receipts private?" Lauren's attorney objected again. Sandra continued. "Were the bank transfers private?" That one landed differently. Lauren looked up, only for a second, then down again. Sandra placed the first transfer record on the table. March 14th, $8,000. A joint investment account into an account ending 1197. "Do you recognize that transfer?" Lauren whispered, "Yes." "Was Mr. Mercer aware of it?" "No." April 22nd, $12,000. Same account. "Was Mr. Mercer aware of that transfer?" "No." June 3rd, $17,500. "Was Mr. Mercer aware?" "No." Sandra moved through the list slowly, not dramatically, not angrily. Just one transaction after another. 8. Amount. Destination. Question. Answer. By the 20th transfer, Lauren's posture had changed. By the 35th, the polished exterior had begun to crack. By the 50th, even her attorney had stopped objecting, because there was nothing left to object to. There was only the record, and the record did not care how Lauren felt about it. Nathan sat quietly through all of it. He did not enjoy it. That surprised him. Some part of him had expected satisfaction. He felt none, only confirmation. And confirmation, he was learning, was colder than revenge. Sandra turned to the trust. "Mrs. Mercer, do you know Ethan Cole?" Lauren closed her eyes. "Yes." "How long have you known him?" "Several years." "How many?" "I don't know." Sandra looked at the page. "Would 6 years be accurate?" Lauren didn't answer. The court reporter waited. Sandra repeated the question. Would 6 years be accurate? Yes. And during those 6 years, were you in a romantic relationship with Mr. Cole? Lauren's attorney leaned in. You can answer. Lauren's voice was barely audible. Yes. Sandra nodded. Did you transfer marital funds into a trust controlled by Mr. Cole? Lauren looked at Nathan then. Finally, for the first time all morning, her eyes were wet. But Nathan could not tell whether the tears were shame or fear. Maybe both. Yes, she said. Sandra paused. Did Nathan Mercer authorize that transfer? No. Did Nathan Mercer know about that trust? No. Did Nathan Mercer know you were planning to leave the marriage? No. Sandra set the paper down. Then why did you do it? The room changed. Even Lauren's attorney looked at her. Because this was the question beneath everything. Not what. Not when. Not how much. Why? Lauren stared at the table. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then she said the sentence that explained more than she realized. Because I thought I deserved more. Nathan did not react. Sandra did not smile. Victor, sitting behind them, looked down at his notes. Because there it was. Not confusion. Not accident. Not loneliness. Entitlement. 15 years of deception reduced to 6 words. Because I thought I deserved more. Sandra let the sentence sit in the room. Then she asked one final question. More than what, Mrs. Mercer? Lauren looked at Nathan again. This time she had no answer. Lauren thought the deposition was humiliation. It wasn't. The deposition was only paperwork. The real collapse came when Ethan Cole was questioned, because Ethan had no loyalty left, no money left, no reason to protect her. And when Sandra asked him what Lauren had promised him, he answered with the kind of honesty desperate men only discover when saving themselves. Ethan Cole did not look like the man Nathan had imagined. That was the first strange thing. For months, Nathan had carried a version of him in his mind. Confident, dangerous, magnetic. The kind of man who could hold someone's attention for 6 years. The real Ethan was different. Tired, nervous, thinner than his photographs. A man whose charm had clearly depended on lighting, alcohol, and other people's money. He arrived with his own attorney. He avoided Lauren completely. That told Nathan everything he needed to know before the deposition even began. Sandra opened with basics. Name, address, employment history, business ownership, bankruptcy filings, debt. Ethan answered carefully. Then Sandra brought out the trust. Mr. Cole, did Mrs. Mercer transfer funds into a trust connected to you? Yes. Did you understand where those funds came from? Ethan hesitated. Sandra waited. I assumed they were hers. Assumed? Yes. Did she ever tell you the money came from marital accounts? Ethan looked at his attorney. His attorney nodded once. She said Nathan would never notice. The sentence hit the room cleanly. No one needed to explain it. Sandra continued. Did Mrs. Mercer discuss divorce plans with you? Yes. For how long? Years. How many years? Ethan rubbed his hands together. Probably 5. 5 years. Nathan looked down at the table. 5 years of dinners, anniversaries, holiday photos, business milestones, family gatherings, all while Lauren discussed leaving him with another man. Sandra moved forward. What did she tell you she expected to receive in the divorce? Ethan exhaled. A few million. Be specific. 3 to 4 million. And what did she intend to do with that money? Start over. With whom? Ethan's mouth tightened. With me. Lauren made a sound from the other side of the room. Not quite a sob. Not quite a protest. Something smaller. Something wounded. Ethan still didn't look at her. Sandra placed a printed message in front of him. Can you read the highlighted portion? Ethan read quietly. Once Nathan signs, everything opens. We just have to let him think he's being fair. Sandra took the paper back. Who sent that message? Lauren. To you? Yes. When? 7 months before the divorce filing. Sandra placed another message down. Read this one. Ethan's face tightened. Sandra waited. He read. Nathan built the business, but I built the marriage that let him build it. I deserve half of everything, and then some. Nathan's expression remained unchanged, but inside something settled. Not broke, settled, because hearing it in Lauren's own words removed the last soft excuse he had been carrying. She had not misunderstood him. She had used him completely. Sandra's next question was quiet. Mr. Cole, did you love Mrs. Mercer? Ethan froze. Lauren looked up quickly. Her entire face changed. For the first time that day, she looked afraid for a reason that had nothing to do with money. Ethan shifted. That's complicated. Sandra tilted her head. No, Mr. Cole, it's yes or no. Ethan stared at the table. No. Lauren closed her eyes. There it was. The future she had protected. The man she had funded. The dream she had chosen over 15 years of loyalty. No. 1 syllable. Final. Sandra leaned back. No further questions. 2 weeks after Ethan's deposition, Lauren's attorneys requested mediation. Nathan expected it. Sandra expected it. Victor expected it. The request came dressed in professional language. Efficiency, privacy, mutual resolution, avoiding unnecessary conflict. Sandra read the email once and smiled. They want to stop the bleeding. Nathan sat across from her. Can they? Not anymore. Still, Sandra agreed to mediation. Not because she expected compromise. Because she wanted Lauren to understand what compromise now meant. The mediation room was neutral. Beige walls. Long table. Bad coffee. A place designed for people to pretend emotions could be organized into numbers. Lauren entered with 2 attorneys. She looked smaller than before. Not physically, strategically. Her certainty was gone. Sandra opened with their position. Return of misappropriated marital funds. Invalidation of trust transfers. Full reimbursement of legal and forensic costs. Waiver of any claim against Mercer Commercial Group beyond legally required marital accounting. Lauren's attorney objected immediately. That is punitive. Sandra didn't blink. No, it's documented. The mediator tried to soften the room. There may be room for creative resolution. Sandra slid a binder forward. There is. Mrs. Mercer can avoid public trial by accepting the documented financial reality. Lauren looked up. And what do I get? Nathan looked at her then. Really looked. That question told him how little had changed. Not what did I do? Not how do we repair this? Not even how bad is it? What do I get? Sandra answered before Nathan had to. You get what remains after the court corrects what you took. Lauren's mouth tightened. I was his wife for 15 years. Sandra nodded. And during those 15 years, you diverted marital assets, concealed relationships, funded third parties, established a trust for another man, and prepared a fraudulent financial exit. Lauren's attorney tried to interrupt. Sandra raised one hand. I'm not finished. The room went still. You also created extensive documentation proving intent. Your own storage unit contains the record. Your own spreadsheets establish planning. Your own messages establish motive. Mr. Cole's testimony establishes expectation. The bank records establish movement. There is no version of this where you walk away with the future you modeled. Lauren stared at Sandra, then at Nathan. You would really do this to me? Nathan sat back slowly. For the first time in months, he answered her directly. No, you did this. The mediator looked down. Lauren's attorney said nothing, because there was nothing to say. The session lasted 3 hours. Nothing was resolved. Not because Nathan refused fairness, because Lauren still thought fairness meant being rescued from consequences. And Nathan was no longer available for that work. The case should have ended in settlement. It didn't. Lauren refused the terms. She believed a judge would see 15 years of marriage and soften the outcome. But she forgot something important. Judges do not rule on feelings. They rule on records. And Nathan had records for everything. The courtroom was colder than Nathan expected. Not emotionally, literally. The air conditioning hummed overhead. Wooden benches creaked under quiet spectators. Sandra arranged her files with exact precision. Lauren sat across the aisle. Ethan was not there. That seemed to hurt her more than anything else. The trial lasted 3 days. Day 1 belonged to the money. Victor testified first. Calm, clear, unemotional. He explained the transfers, the hidden accounts, the trust, the timing, the pattern. He did not insult Lauren. He did not speculate. He did not need to. The numbers did enough damage on their own. When Lauren's attorney tried to suggest the transfers were household reallocations, Victor opened the transaction map. Colored lines moved across the screen. Joint accounts to private accounts. Private accounts to Ethan. Private accounts to hotel charges. Private accounts to travel. Private accounts to the farmhouse. The courtroom watched the marriage become a diagram. A structure of deception, built one transfer at a time. Day 2 belonged to the timeline. Sandra presented the storage unit. The photographs, the letters, the receipts. Not all of them. Enough. Enough to show pattern. Enough to show duration. Enough to show that the affairs were not isolated mistakes. Lauren stared straight ahead through most of it. But when Sandra introduced the storage unit payment history, Lauren lowered her head, because that history was the hardest thing to explain. 12 years and 9 months. A secret archive, paid monthly, maintained carefully, preserved intentionally. Day 3 belonged to intent, the messages, the projections, the divorce settlement models, the trust documents, the sentence from deposition, because I thought I deserved more. Sandra used it once, only once. That made it stronger. During closing, she stood before the judge and spoke without raising her voice. Your Honor, this case is not about heartbreak. It is not about whether a marriage failed. Marriages fail every day. This case is about concealed financial conduct, intentional asset movement, and documented planning to extract value from a spouse through deception. Mr. Mercer is not asking this court to punish Mrs. Mercer for infidelity. He is asking the court to recognize the record. Then she placed one hand on the evidence binder, and the record is clear. Lauren's attorney gave a careful closing. 15 years, shared life, emotional complexity, contribution to the marriage, human imperfection. It was polished. It was professional. It was also too late, because emotional complexity cannot erase bank records. The judge took 2 hours. Nathan spent those 2 hours sitting in the hallway. Sandra sat beside him. Victor stood near the window. No one said much. There are moments when words become decorative. This was one of them. At 3:14 p.m., they were called back inside. Everyone stood, then sat. The judge began reading. His voice was even, measured, almost quiet. The court finds substantial evidence of intentional concealment of marital assets. Lauren closed her eyes. The court finds that funds were transferred without disclosure or consent. Her attorney placed a hand near her folder. The court finds that the trust connected to Ethan Cole was funded, at least in substantial part, by improperly diverted marital funds. Nathan looked down, not because he was overwhelmed, because he wanted to remember the sound of truth becoming official. The ruling continued. The trust transfers were reversed. The hidden property was classified according to its funding source. Lauren's claim against Nathan's company was sharply limited. Her request for enhanced settlement consideration was denied. Legal and forensic costs were awarded in Nathan's favor, and the court reserved the right to impose additional sanctions if undisclosed assets continued to surface. Lauren began crying before the judge finished. Quietly at first, then harder. Nathan did not look at her. Not because he was cruel, because her tears no longer had authority over him. For 15 years, Lauren's emotions had shaped rooms, changed conversations, redirected accountability, pulled Nathan back into repair mode. That version of him was gone. When the ruling ended, Sandra closed her folder. Victor exhaled behind them. Lauren remained seated. As Nathan stood to leave, she finally spoke. Nathan. He stopped. Not long, just enough. I'm sorry. He looked at her. And for the first time, he believed she might mean it. Not fully. Not in the way that restores anything. but enough to know she had finally reached the place where consequences had made honesty possible. Nathan nodded once, then walked out. He had nothing left to give her. Not anger, not comfort, not explanation. Nothing. And that was the cleanest ending of all. After the ruling, people expected Nathan to celebrate. He didn't. He went home, made coffee, sat at his kitchen table, and opened a new project file. Because the strangest part of surviving betrayal is not the pain. It's the quiet that comes after. And Nathan had to learn what to do with a life that no longer required him to protect a lie.